Hello, this is your instructor Jason DeCristofaro for MUS121 Music Theory, and this is the MuseScore video tutorial for this week's two assignments, respectively MuseScore Assignment 1 and MuseScore Assignment 2. You'll be expected to use MuseScore to create a digital score for each assignment. The first assignment is essentially a copy job of this document you have in front of you, which I will also have uploaded in Moodle. The second assignment is composing new melodies and actually notating them in MuseScore. So let's get started and learn how to use this wonderful program. First thing we're going to do is create a new document. Click on File and then select New. A new window will open with 5 different fields allowing you to create a new document. All you need to worry about are the title and your name. Don't worry about subtitle, lyricist, or copyright. When you click Next, a new window will open offering different templates. For the purposes of this assignment, we'll select General. When I select this, you'll see categories of instruments. Notice how MuseScore has it set to default as common instruments. Make sure you select all instruments so you have access to all the instruments and sounds in the MuseScore sound bank. Let's say I want to write a musical piece for flute. Well, I'll select Woodwind category, flute, and add to the score. Next, we can select our key signature, 1 sharp for G major or E minor. If we do not wish to specify a tempo, simply leave the tempo box unchecked. However, for the purposes of the first MuseScore assignment, you will want to select a tempo, so be sure to check this tempo box. And then you can select the BPM or beats per minute, for however fast or slow you want this to be. So we're going to have 92 beats per minute. In our last window to create the document template, we have several aspects that we need to fill out. First is the time signature. The top part of the time signature, or how many beats per measure, is determined in this first box, and we can use the up or down arrows to adjust. The second part of the time signature, what type of note gets the beat, can be determined in this box, and you can see that it ranges from whole note to half note to quarter note to eighth note all the way up to 64th note. For the purposes of this tutorial, we will use 4/4 time. Notice how you also have a cut time and common time option. We don't have any need for an anacrusis or pickup measure in either of the assignments this week, but if you ever decide to notate a melody using MuseScore that has an anacrusis or pickup note to the first full measure, you can always select this option. Finally, we enter the number of measures. The new document that's created has all the information that we just input. Title, name, number of measures, in this case 8, tempo, quarter note equals 92 BPM, time signature of 4/4, and the key signature. Now there are a few elements of MuseScore that are very similar to other programs, and I'm going to cover those really quickly. Similar to Microsoft Office Suite, if we select File, we can create a new document by selecting New, open a pre-existing document from a folder on our computer by selecting Open, save our work here in MuseScore as a MuseScore file by clicking Save, save as to create with a different, to save as a different file format, and then most importantly, export, which automatically saves your MuseScore assignment as a PDF file unless you indicate otherwise. Again, similar to Microsoft Office Suite, we have the undo, redo, cut, copy, paste, select all functions. And you'll notice here on my Windows OS, I have keyboard shortcuts. These will look different on a Macintosh, but you can always use the edit function for all these basic functions. And then we also have the zoom function, which allows us to enlarge or minimize the page. Now let's talk about the elements unique to MuseScore. When you're proofreading your MuseScore assignments, one thing that you're going to want to do is not just visually proofread the score, but also do a playback to hear if you made any mistakes. So to do this, we have a playback button, which also functions as a stop button. If we want to go back to the beginning of our musical score or the beginning of the document for playback, simply click the rewind to start position. If we want a click track to go along with our playback, we select the Metronome tool. Now if we want to input a note, we select the measure we hope to add notes to, and then we select Note Input. We then select the note value we want. So let's say we want 4 quarter notes, G, A, B, G in the first measure. Well, we'll go ahead and select quarter note and then scroll down here to the measure. Notice how when I hover over the staff, scrolling up and down with my mouse, that we can position the note anywhere on the musical staff that we'd like. Again, I want G, A, and notice how we get that flute sound, and B. Now let's say that my finger accidentally slips and instead of B I accidentally put A. That's okay. Using the up-down arrows on your computer keyboard, you can move up or down a half step to change the note. So if we want to change this A to a B, we move it up 2 half steps to B. If we want a different note value than quarter notes, we simply keep the Note Input tool selected and then switch to a different note value. In this case, eighth notes, followed by a half note. Let's say we want a dotted note, like a dotted half note. Well, first we make sure Note Input is selected, select our half note, and then add the dot before adding to the measure. If we want a tied note, then we select the note that begins the tie and add it to the measure. We then click the tie tool to tie it to the note at the beginning of the next measure. So we have a tie across the bar line. Let's say that we want to do flats, sharps, or natural signs. For instance, let's say we want the second note in this measure to be a B flat. First, we input the B on the staff and then select the flat sign. If we want to change back to a natural, same exact principle. B on the staff, add the natural sign. Let's say we want to manually enter rests. One thing you may have noticed with rests is that MuseScore automatically adds rests wherever we did not put notes to make sure that each measure has all 4 beats. If we want to manually enter rests, we select Note Input and then the Rest tool. But let's say we want something other than a quarter note rest, like an eighth note rest. To get an eighth note rest, we select Note Input, eighth note, and then click the Rest tool. Notice how 2 eighth note rests appear. Now let's say we only want this first eighth note rest, and we want this second eighth note to not be a rest but a note. We deselect the Rest tool by simply clicking it again, and then add in an eighth note. Now let's say we want to add lyrics to these notes. First and most important thing to do is deselect Note Input by clicking on it. Then, using your mouse, scroll down to the note that you want to start setting lyrics to and simply select it. Then go to Add, Text, and Lyrics. A lyrics box will appear allowing you to type in lyrics. If you want to go to the next note, simply click the spacebar. Once you are done typing in the text, click away from the notes or text on a blank part of the musical score, and now we have the notes with the accompanying text. One more function that you will definitely want to know how to use for the 2 assignments this week are the palettes. Now there is a master palette which offers a wide range of advanced functions. For the purposes of the 2 assignments that are due this week and the purposes of this basic tutorial, we will not cover aspects of the master palette, but there are a lot of great tools in this palette you can use to add various things like glissandos and arpeggios to your musical score. We're going to stick with the basic palette. Now, we're not going to worry about grace notes this week. Just know that you can add grace notes by selecting and adding to the score in much the same way you would for notes. Let's say we want to change the clef halfway through the piece. For example, let's say we want the last 4 measures to go into bass clef. Simply select the bass clef, click and drag over to the measure you would like it to start being in bass clef. Voila! If we want to go back to treble clef, simply undo. We use the same click and drag principle for a lot of the other elements of the palette tools. Let's say, for example, that we want to modulate from our starting key of G major to the key of D major. Select the key signature for D major and move over to the measure where we would like to see this change. Let's say we want to also move to a new time signature. Instead of 4/4, 3/4 in this measure. Same thing. Select, click, and drag and drop. If you want to repeat a particular section of the melody, let's say the first 4 bars, you can go ahead and select the start repeat and place in the first measure, and then the end repeat at the end of that musical phrase. When we do playback, notice how it repeats back to the beginning. In MuseScore Assignment 1, you will need to add a crescendo. To do this, simply click the crescendo and place in the measure that you would like it to appear. Now let's say you want this crescendo to expand beyond the first measure, or just this one measure. Simply move it after clicking on it, either right or left, to make it larger or smaller, and then you can also expand it this way. You will also need to add an accent. Same principle as before. Simply select the accent, place above the note, which will be highlighted that you wish to be accented, and then release. Dynamics are also something you will need to add in your first MuseScore assignment this week. Simply select the dynamic you want and place it over the note. Now, if you're dealing with music that has lyrics, this might happen. Notice how the dynamic is getting in the way of the text. Simply select the dynamic and move it above the staff so you can still read the text clearly, as well as the dynamic indicating piano or soft. One more thing. Let's say that you don't want everything to be so close together here. In other words, you want to spread the measures out or even go create a new line of music. To do this, make sure that everything else is deselected, particularly note input. Select the measure that you would like to skip to the next line. On your keyboard, you can click one of the bracket signs to either expand or contract the measure. Make sure that you click Shift and then the bracket to either contract or expand. Notice that as I keep expanding, we create a new line. If I want the 3/4 to be on the next line, voila. I should reiterate that this is not a total overview of MuseScore, just a basic overview for the purposes of what you will need for this week's 2 assignments. If you have any other questions about MuseScore, feel free to contact me, or any questions about this week's assignments, you are also free to contact me. I look forward to seeing everyone's work.